Hi, Roy here, my channel Roy Reads Anything, back in the attic room where I used to record videos back when all of this first started. And just a little bit of a catch-up, kind of a Friday reads kind of thing, talking about things that I've read recently. So starting with a physical book, The Adventures of Roderick Langham by Rafe McGregor. So this I found, there's a bright spot on the wall. If I get it just right, it will look like I've got a sort of mystical halo. Yes, The Adventures of Roderick Langham. So saw this a couple of times, didn't pick it up, and then when I read the blurb on the inside and saw a reference to it being about a reluctant occult detective, I thought, well, I've got to get this. And it's great. So the character, Roderick Langham, he starts off serving in the army. So it's set in like Victorian times. He's in India with the military, has an encounter with a kind of a Lovecraftian menace. And then various times he's a police inspector, a private individual, and he's encountering further supernatural menaces, including Dracula and also Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson. So there's lots going on, crossover type stuff, which I tend to like, and it's good. So it's a series of connected short stories, forms a kind of episodic novel, really. Langham is a flawed but not unlikable character. The Victorian settings seem convincing to me, and like I say, great to see some familiar characters woven in with a newly invented one. So like that, and also in a kind of real world crossover. It turns out that the author, Rafe McGregor, I believe works in the university in our town. So he's at certain times when the stars are in the alignment, I guess must be physically quite close to right where I'm sitting now. Maybe I'll show up at his office trying to get a signature. So that was good. Other stuff tended to be online. Here's a crime book I read on Kindle, All the Dangerous Things by Stacy Willingham. Now, I knew it was a crime book because it's got crime typeface, this kind of sans serif, thin letters with a moody figure in a dark landscape. Tells you it's crime, does it not? Unless it's cosy crime, in which case these days they tend to try and make it look like as much like the Thursday Murder Club as possible. To be honest, this kind of thing puts me off a bit. I know it's a useful signature. What am I talking about? It's a useful thing for the buyers to latch onto, I guess, but it just sort of says, hey, generic landfill coming your way. But this is good. So the protagonist has her her child disappeared a year ago. And interestingly, she suffers from severe insomnia, like to the point of hardly sleeping at all, except for little micro sleeps, which does basically gives you all sorts of problems, including hallucinations. So it kind of makes her an unreliable narrator. Years gone by, no one's really looking for the kid. Some people tend to think either she did something terrible or it's too late. So she's sort of doing stuff, including trolling around the true crime convention circuit. I guess there is such a thing. So various people there, might give her clues or help her on the hunt. Plus, there's a flashback narrative of something terrible that happened back when she was a child that also involves sleep, but the other way around, it involves sleepwalking. So lots of interesting stuff going on there. Held my attention, pretty good. So yeah, Stacy Willingham. Not bad at all. Another Kindle book, which I mentioned before when I'd just read part of it, The Baby Plan by Emma Bennet. So I was kind of seeking a bit of a respite from the grim goings on of Wolf Hall. Read The Baby Plan, great. So Emma Bennet, very active on AuthorTube, BookTube, basically kind of the best person ever. And the premise might have put me off if I didn't know the author and hadn't read one of her books before. So basically, there's a woman who goes to visit her. She's been estranged from her sister, is heading to visit her for a sort of reconciliation, hopefully. But it turns out she's died. And who knew? She has a little baby. So the protagonist ends up with a baby. So part of it's the jeopardy and drama of what do you do if you suddenly have a baby to look after. And obviously in the book, the answer isn't, well, regrettably, we've got to let social services deal with it. She actually is looking after the baby. Then, also unknown, the father appears. The father, who is described very much like Chris Hemsworth, the Thor actor. And all of this is happening in Brighton. So if you like the idea of ending up cohabiting with the Thor guy in Brighton, this is a book for you. It does, it does lots of the cozy things really well. I mean, I think coziness, part of it comes from sort of sensory experiences. So you want the narrative to be punctuated with people having a nice glass of wine and some nice meals, probably in an interesting setting. So it's doing all of that. And I guess also the ultimate coziness comes from a sort of existential level, comes from everything. The rules work, so everything's all right in the end. But with this, as in the other Emma Bennet book I read at Christmas, really crackles along. It's clean, it's modern, it's funny, and delivers exactly what you'd want from a romance. So really like that. And to finish, I'll just talk about a little acquisition. Tomorrow Sometimes Comes. So I just got this because I've got other books from this publisher, Ikon, a short-lived paperback publisher from the early 1960s. I picked up some of theirs that are to do with soap operas, sort of TV tie-ins, and I saw that they had a science fiction book, so I just thought, I'm interested in these guys. I like the way they obviously were trying for sort of stylish design. So here you've got, hard to see really, this is actually a distorted watch face, suggesting perhaps it's some sort of time travel thing. And then you've got these blocks of abstract colour, sort of pure colour, rather than the usual way colours are done in little 4-colour dots. So these are these actual colours, and then they overlap to make other colours. Sorry, getting a bit technical there. One of the best blurbs ever. So informative. Science fantasy at its best. But they've put an exclamation mark on it, so I guess they must really believe it. So I'm going to read the book, which I haven't yet, but there's interesting things to know. Let's see. Cover design by Raymond E. Meelan, MSIA. And I looked him up, did lots of industrial logo design as well. I can only assume he designed this logo. Does rather look like his other work. This book, this is 1962, first published by Home & Van Taal in 1951. So Van Taal, to most sort of paperback dudes, would immediately make you think of Herbert Van Taal and his Pan Book of Horror Stories. And it turns out it is that guy who had a short-lived mushroom publishing operation back in the day. So that's interesting. And also I like the fact they got this fabulous address. Ikon Books Limited, 5 Royal Opera Arcade, Pall Mall, London SW1. That is a really posh address. So I guess if they spent all their money on fancy designs and hanging out in Pall Mall. Maybe that's why they didn't last very long. Anyway, yes, that's the thing I've bought. Here I am, surrounded by my own mushroom-like collection. Loads of stuff here. I mustn't forget, I've got Face in the Abyss by A. Merritt. Another classic bit of paperback design. You know, oh man. All sorts of cool stuff for another time. So, back soon with something else. Cheers, everybody.